From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Paranormal Radio with Bob Trzeciak on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment on Monday, April the 26th, the year 2021. So sit back and enjoy Paranormal Radio. And now here's the king of Paranormal Radio, the best in the market, Mr. Bob Trzeciak.
Oh, so now I'm in the market, huh? Thank you, John. It is always a joy to come here and do these shows. I just really get such a kick out of this. They're just such a pleasure for me to do. Thank you for allowing me to do these once a month like this. Good grief. Where do we start here tonight? Going to talk Titanic. It's not really paranormal, but I like to do this from time to time. If you listen to the show, I do take a break from time to time, and we will talk about something else of interest like this, and we'll bring other folks on with that. And the gentleman I've got on tonight is really into the Titanic a lot, and sort of a chance meeting. I'm going to talk about that in just a second here, but before I even get to that, I just want to tell you a couple of things coming up here with the show, what's going on with that. Okay, this is the April show, coming up May 17th. We're going to have some of the folks from Blood Moon Paranormal coming on. Zach and Emily. Zach Wessel, I believe is his name. Emily, I forget the young lady's name. Nice couple to talk with. Actually, just a chance encounter with them and kind of hit it off and struck it really well with them and talked with them and invited them to do the show. And they're going to come on. They're going to be some fantastic guests talking about that. And maybe on that show, too, maybe Pete will stop by. I'm not really sure. Pete kind of has an open invitation. He kind of pops in when he would like to. Pete Crapia, that is. So he may be on for that one. He may not. But anyway, Zach and Emily, I'm looking forward to talking to them. Very nice couple. Really nice. And Emily also is a practicing Wiccan. And that has been something since I've started doing this show. Since I've been doing paranormal now for almost 10 years. I was really surprised to find out it was that long. She's actually going to come on, and I says, I've been wanting to get a Wiccan on here for the longest time, so now I'm finally going to have somebody on that's actually a practicing Wiccan, or a witch. But she's a good witch. She's a very nice young lady. So they're going to come on, and we're going to have a good time talking with them. That'll be next month, on May 17th. May 7th, coming up the evening of May 7th, I will be over at the Irish Legends. If you're familiar with that, right across from what used to be the old Willoughby Ballroom there with that Resurrection Mary connection there on Archer Road. And I'll be there doing some palm readings for the evening there with Irish Legends. I'll be there with that. And then some other things kind of come up here. Something with the Bridgeview Park District, something with the Alsip Library. We got a couple of things going on, some things for fall and some stuff I'm working on down the line. And nothing too set in stone with those, so we'll be announcing that. Also some other palm reading things and stuff too. So as those things come up, we'll be announcing them. Also, too, anything that the guests that pop on the show may have going on. We'll talk about that. Like I said, now, tonight we are talking Titanic. Everything you've ever wanted to know about Titanic, what we're afraid to ask, or you didn't even know existed, we will be talking about tonight, about the Titanic. Because you have two people that are really, really into the Titanic here. Mr. Mike Rosario, also known as Mikey, GST. Sort of a chance meeting I had with him. And you know how with some people, you meet them and you just kind of click, and that's what it was. A mutual friend of ours, Mr. Sansuho, kind of loosely introduced me into him. I mentioned something about Titanic, and he said, "Oh, Bob, I didn't know you were into Titanic." And I said, "Yep, almost as long as I've been into the paranormal." He said, "Oh, you got to talk to Mikey." I said, "Okay, Stan, give me his phone number later on." So he gave me the number. I called it up, and Mikey and I on the phone, yep, for like an hour talking there. Mike, you want to come on and do the show? Yep. So Mike's with us tonight. We're going to talk paranormal, Titanic is. There's some paranormal things with the Titanic. So we're talking Titanic tonight. So, Mr. Mike Rosario, it is a joy to have you here. It's a joy to meet you in person, too. Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
It's been really an honor. It's my very first time here and meeting you guys. It's been a pleasure, seriously. Very great to be on. And, to talk Titanic, the Olympic-class liners, and, of course, where she was born and bred,
It's always a she. Yeah. Ships are always a she.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of course, in Germany, they have a different connotation. It's kind of like the reverse. They name the he's, and I think this one has the Kaiser Wilhelm or something like that, and of course the Bismarck. Oh boy, the Bismarck.
Well, the German liners at this time. The turn of the last century, the teens of the last century, the heyday of the ocean liners and that, the German liners were known for speed. If you needed to come across the Atlantic fast and you needed to get your cargo across, use the German liners. The British liners, they sort of took the reversal on this, and they decided with the Olympic-class ships, which would have been the ones we're going to be talking about tonight, which would have been the Titanic and her two sisters, the Olympic, and then, of course, the Britannic, which was originally supposed to be the Gigantic, but then got renamed the Britannic after the Titanic disaster. Those three ships, they decided to opt more for luxury. Spare no expense on the luxurious fittings out and furnishings, and of course British liners are well known for their service, and so they just really, no pun intended, overboard on that one, and that was their thing, yeah.
Absolutely.
Although they were a ship, cargo ship too, freight, and they were also a licensed mail ship too, the RMS. Royal Mail Steamer, so they were licensed to carry mail across the Atlantic, yeah, which is a real honor. I found out there was something like only 200 liners that carried the title RMS. I thought like every ship was an RMS, any ship that carried a bag of mail, but they says, no, that was something because the mail had to be there on time. You were penalized if it didn't get delivered on time and all that. So I don't know what happened.
Right, yes.
With Titanic, since all the mail went down with the ship, I don't know who got penalized on that, but... Yeah,
it's that was one of the first rooms first cargo holds that flooded. Actually, a few had died, perished in there, and I think it was like coming out at a good 400 tons a minute or so. That water was gushing inside in her hull. There it was a lot.
Yeah, a lot of water came in a very short time. That's why they knew they were in trouble. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the steam packet company in England, they, of course, Bruce Ismay, the managing director of the White Star Line, his father had passed away, and he inherited the business actually. So, and of course, the gentleman who funded the entire class, the Olympic class. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The Olympic, the Titanic, later on Britannic, which is the largest of the three sisters. J.P. Morgan was the gentleman who financed everything there. They say, well, it's an English ship or it's an Irish ship, but it's come from an American corporation, actually.
Yeah.
And that's who financed it. And of course, subsidiaries, the English, and of course, the builders, the Irish. So Belfast, Ireland. So,
absolutely, no doubt about it. It was Irish labor that did a lot of the building on that ship. Yeah, in Queenstown. Queenstown is not Queenstown anymore. It's something else, isn't it?
It's now called Cobh. C-O-B-H. I think it's pronounced Cobh. I think one of her port of calls, I believe.
They have a huge Titanic museum there too, as well.
It's gorgeous, really gorgeous. I always wanted to go across seas and see that. I was in Germany last year. I have some German heritage in me, and I wanted to visit Beethoven, and go see where he was born and everything. I'm a huge classical enthusiast.
Okay,
it's awesome stuff.
Was he Germany or Austria? Well, it was Austro-Hungarian Empire. So
he was born in Germany, Bonn, Germany. He passed away actually in I believe in Vienna, Austria.
Yeah.
His last days there, I think it was March 26th, I believe. March 26th of 1827, I think it was. They said it was a huge, stormy night and morning.
It wouldn't matter to him. He couldn't hear it anyway. So,
Poor guy. Seriously, he went through a lot. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but anyway, Titanic, like you say, American company, British financed and then Irish built. A lot of the laborers and stuff, Irish.
Absolutely. 15,000, I believe.
Two men that I know of died in the building of the ship. Two men. Yeah, two. Remarkably, when you think of how many people worked on it, there might have been some other casualties, some other accidents and things, but two actually got killed doing it. One fell, a bad fall, and another one was crushed by a piece of timber.
Bingo.
During the launch,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there were two deaths,
Right.
Yeah, so maybe it just started off with a bad omen,
Yes. I think 9 would lose their lives building these ships here. You're absolutely right. There was a gentleman, actually a young kid, 16, 17 years old. He fell a long ways down, and he pretty much died instantly, the poor kid. Yeah, and actually, I think it was on the launch. I believe it was May 31st of
1911.
That's the one. Yeah, I guess he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and of course, at that time the vessel, empty at the time, was weighing at least 25,000 tons. Even though she's still empty inside, she's one hell of a mother, seriously. Very heavy, and they only had 20 tons of grease and soap and oil and stuff like that.
Just in case you don't know kind of what Mike's talking about here, now you build a ship. The ship is built in what they call dry dock. It's built there. So that's where it's built, like from the keel, which is the bottom of the ship, up. And then you get to a certain point, you don't put the funnels on, you don't put the other things on it, and what you do then is you have a launch, and you launch it out into the water. And then when it's finally launched, and that, of course, is a big celebration. If they're going to have any kind of a christening where they break the bottle on it, that's when they do it. And it's launched into the water, and then when it's there and now floating on its own, then they do the fitting out. Where they come in, they fit out the compartments, they do all the luxurious, the carpeting, the cabins, the kitchens, the et cetera, on and on and on, and everything else that fits the ship out,
That's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
So just in case you kind of don't know, maybe they're, Titanic people or people that know a little bit about shipping that would know that, but maybe everybody else doesn't. So I just want to explain a little bit there about that.
Yeah. It's back in the 1912, the early 1900 era. There, they call it the Edwardian era, I believe. And back then they built ships from the bottom up. Unlike today. They're all built in like a puzzle, a jigsaw puzzle, in sections. And they never built it with rivets, as far as I know now. These days, it's never with rivets. It's mostly welded on there.
Oh, yeah, welding didn't exist in those days. They didn't have that. It wasn't there, so everything was hot riveted.
I think it was a good 1,000, almost 2,000 tons of rivets. That held her together. About 3.5 million or so that kept it together. There were plates, 30 feet long, over about an inch wide or so, 6 feet or so tall, wearing almost about 3 tons or so. And they had at least, 3,000 or so plates. I was not sure on the number, but it's quite a few. Seriously,
it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of metal. That's for sure.
Amazing.
It's the original heavy metal.
I'm a Rammstein fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and it's like they said on a few programs. They said that this ship was built like a battleship. That's how strong she was. Many people have gone there and say, well, the ship, the metal itself was brittle.
There have been some controversy about that. That kind of came out in more recent years about the metal being defective, and maybe that actually contributed to the sinking. Also, too, about the fire inside one of the coal bunkers. They think that, too. So there's a couple of theories about this that haven't really been proven, and quite honestly, they may never be really proven. And it won't make a difference one way or the other. I mean, even if you do prove that there was a fire, or you do prove that the metal was in some way defective and brittle, and that actually contributed to this ship disaster, it's not going to, change things. It still went down, and all these people still did lose their lives. Yeah. So, but no. The story does tend to go on and go on and go on. Titanic continues on, and it probably will, forever.
Here we are, 109 years later, and we have enthusiasts, historians, like ourselves. I wouldn't call myself an historian, but more like a big buff, a big enthusiast, Titanic enthusiast.
You're a historian.
I'm an expert.
No, you are. You know more than you think you do. Once you start talking about it, once you start jogging your memory, just start writing things down, and you know more than you think you know. You do. Really, once you start doing it,
It's been one endless fascination right after another. One book, one magazine, one little article or something like that, I would scrap up there and put in like a little binder or something like that, And when it comes to referencing something, I have so much material, dating back, when I first got involved with this, this interest, basically, I think it was back, 1988, 1987-ish or something like that.
So by then the wreck because the wreck got found in 85.
In 85, yeah. My dad brought a magazine from his job there, and it said that's a National Geographic magazine. That's what it was.
Oh yeah, the one with the fold-outs in it, the Bob Ballard. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. Oh, I was like, hooked, 100% hooked.
Sure.
I was like, bingo. I'm going to be studying that for the rest of my life. If it wasn't Beethoven, it's going to be that. Seriously.
I could not believe it in September when the newspapers came out that they found the Titanic. I could not believe it. Ironically, I'd always been, like from a kid on, always been a Titanic fan. And now when I was a kid growing up, the school library, we had 2 books on Titanic. One was A Night to Remember, the Walter Lord book, which has been like the Bible on the Titanic, particularly on the survivor stories, more so, I think, and about the sinking. And another one was called The Titanic and the Californian, which that book has long since gone out of print. But those 2 books were like the only 2 books available on it. And then I can remember 2 films very distinctly. One was Titanic with Barbara Stanwyck and Clifton Webb, which was very fictional, but nonetheless it was the Titanic. And then, of course, what I still think is one of the better, if not the best films out there was A Night to Remember.
Absolutely. The
1958 British film.
Right.
Yeah, and that's it's almost done like serial documentary style, which is how he wrote the book. And Walter Lord, when he wrote that book, was really at a good advantage because a lot of survivors were still around in the 50s when he wrote that, and they consulted with them, and they knew, well, I was here, and this was said there, and that was this, and many people still had some of the clothes that they wore. They had Edith Russell still had her toy pig, with it played the mezik, which was the dance at that time.
Yeah,
because the teens were the dancers when the tango and the foxtrot and the mezik and all these crazy dances came out, and her pig, when you twisted the tail, it played the mezik, and she supposedly entertained children in the lifeboat with that little toy pig. That was her lucky pig.
That was it.
That's still around. They still have that thing. It doesn't work anymore. The music mechanism is broke. The music box mechanism, but they still have Edith's her pig. Yeah,
that's incredible. Oh my!
But anyway, these people were still around, when he made that film, so he had the distinct advantage of it. And then also too, as a child, Walter Lord in the 30s convinced his parents to go to Europe on the Olympic.
Right.
Which was the sister, because he wanted to see what the Titanic actually looked like. And the Olympic was the sister, almost identical to the Titanic, except for the color scheme. Anyway, yeah.
Exactly right. The Titanic. There's a lot of similarities to the. Now, the one like I said, me being an expert, I am not an expert because people who are in this field. They learn something new every single day.
Oh, you do.
So
don't you though? Don't you? If it's not about this, it's about something else.
Something
else. You do learn something every single day. You learn something
absolutely,
new.
Absolutely. And I'm so very fortunate to have met so many good, folks, along with great friends who are in this field as well. Too wonderful people, and I learn from them. It's really fantastic stuff. But something new I just learned that I never knew before. I knew something about it, but I didn't know 100% about it. They said something about a dark room being on the ship itself. It's where back in those days, if amateur photographers would go on board there and just test their photography out, and they would need a dark room to help, publish, develop their photographs and stuff like that. I heard that I read somewhere, it was in a book, I'm not sure what it was, but I heard they did have something like that on the Titanic. But I learned recently that no, it wasn't on the Titanic. They had the room. It was used for something else. I think it was like a cloak room or something like that. Vests or something like that, or a coat or something like that. It was used that room particularly for that purpose there, where the Olympic would actually have that room to develop their stuff there. So
the Olympic had the much longer life. A
lot of stuff.
So a lot of more modern things, too, would have been added to the Olympic, as time went on.
Exactly.
Old Reliable, or old Ironsides, or whatever they wanted to call it, I think it was the 19th, after the Titanic disaster, so many things had been changed. Oh, immediately.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
And of course, number one, the lifeboat configuration. They wanted to go with, originally, with the Olympic class liners, I think 64 lifeboats. Then it was dropped down to 48, I believe. Now, the British Board of Trade, I think, they got Bruce Ismay was in there, Alexander Carlisle, and William Lord Peary. Exactly.
They used a weird formula, and it wasn't so much by how many people were on board; it was by the tonnage of the ship. In
Bingo.
Titanic, Titanic actually carried 16 boats, which was what they required, but they were actually 4 over the requirement. Because they had the 4 Englehart collapsibles. The collapsibles are something they no longer use; it's outdated now. But it was a wooden bottom, and it would had like canvas sides. When it would be launched, you could pull the canvas sides up, and it became like a little
raft or something.
That type of thing like that. So, but it was called a collapsible. So they had 4 of those. So they were actually over what they were required to have.
Right.
But it didn't matter anyway. The boats they did have, they never filled the capacity anyhow. So
Absolutely.
So it was just really handled very badly. And this another strange thing, which I'm sure you're well aware of, was ironically the Titanic had a new state-of-the-art davit for lowering lifeboats called the Welland davit.
That's correct.
The Welland davit. Normally with the way you launch a boat on a liner is it's hooked out there, it's hanging there on the side, and it goes down, and that's it. One boat goes down, and that's all. To launch another boat from that location would be a very arduous task. You'd have to drag this heavy wooden boat over and all this and try to fit it. It would be impossible to do. You couldn't do it. But with these davits, what they actually did is they would swing, you cranked them back, and they would swing back towards the deck. Another boat could be hooked on, and then it could be swung out. So by doing that, you could really launch multiple boats from the same location. They were equipped to do this, but they didn't have the boats to do it with. They didn't have the boats. Yeah.
That's what happened. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's
no one could foresee anything like this happening, so they figured, well, we're fine. If anything does happen, basically all we're going to have to do is maybe ferry passengers across to another liner or something with the lifeboats we have. We're fine. We don't need to do that. Well, no one was anticipating anything like this ever happening, you know.
Right. They considered Titanic, if something should happen to the boat itself, it would just sink just so low, by the edge, and everything would equalize pretty much, because the more, properly, I think it's subdivided divisions in your ship there, the less lifeboats you would need, because everything would equalize. You can have as much tonnage of water as you want in a boat; it'll still equalize at a certain point there, even with the hole still there. So, but they didn't really intend on this situation.
Yeah,
here.
no one was anticipating anything like this ever happening. No. The whole claim too about the unsinkable ship, that was something that White Star Line themselves never claimed. They never said that. They never said this is an unsinkable ship. This ship is unsinkable. It was some very slight thing in some publicity thing, and it said the 16 watertight, oddly enough, 16 lifeboats, 16 watertight compartments. 16 watertight compartments rendered the ship practically unsinkable.
Right.
That was what it said. And then from that, somebody else said, oh, the ship is unsinkable. And they never made that claim. They never claimed that. They never made that.
It was really bizarre. They even, I think one of my books here that I have, to show Bob here, I have, I hope I brought it. But in one of these books here, it says that it wasn't the actual shipping company, the shipping line that said all that stuff.
Yeah, that White Star. They never made that claim. No.
Yeah. Mostly it was just these tabloids or something like that. These newspaper men.
Publicity and then other people promoting their product. Vinolia, Otto, toilet soap, for the highest luxury at sea.
Right.
And they would promote their product. You're going on the most, the unsinkable ship, the Titanic, and, God knows what all those table linens in China and who knows what, anything that Titanic would have carried, any product that would have been in use on the ship, you would have promoted, as, boy, we're setting the standard now because we're going on this first-class liner like this, and they're using our stuff,
Publicity, publicity, PR and stuff like that. They want to make sure that, that this ship is going to sell for them.
Sure.
They compromised this, they compromised that. Of course, number one was the lifeboat situation. I think one of them said was that why have so many lifeboats on the deck? It's going to look so cluttered. It's going to be overwhelmed. Nobody can even step foot on the boat deck there.
Yeah, everything was for the aesthetic. Yeah, you wanted it to be pleasing to the eye. Well, now when you're catering to a class of people that are capable of paying $4,500 for a one-way crossing, and those are $19-12, let's say. Now, these are people that you want to. Everything's got to be the finest, the best, and nothing can be offensive to the eye and all this. Thomas Andrews, the shipbuilder, did really go for the extra boats. He wanted the extra boats on there, but of course he was outvoted.
Correct.
He was outvoted on that. But well, whatever. It was what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, he took over after I think it was. was it Lord Peary? Yeah. He went. He was ousted from his company because
he still remained like the chairman of the board or something. He still was in some position. He was still something to do with it.
Yeah.
But he didn't have an active part like in the actual running of the ship.
Right. Yeah.
But nonetheless, he still sat on the board or something. He had his hands in there somewhere. He was still in it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it was after Alexander Carlisle. He was the brother-in-law, I think, what's the managing director of Harlan and Wolff.
Harlan and Wolff.
Yeah, I'm getting these names mixed up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But it was his brother-in-law who said, you know what, hey, you're not going to put in my lifeboats, why do I have to design another ship for you again? You know, so that's when his nephew, I think, he came in, Thomas Andrews, and he became managing director. So, and yes, he had.
I don't know if he was managing director. He was actually builder.
He was the architect.
He actually rode on the ship. He was taking the maiden voyage to work out all the finer points.
Yes,
certain things they wanted changed. And a lot of it was silly stuff, but it was stuff they wanted to do. Stain the wicker furniture a different shade. Yeah. There were too many screws in the stateroom hat hooks. There again for the aesthetics. Yeah. First class staterooms, you had hat hooks. Too many screws are showing. We can't have that.
Right.
We got to get rid of that. The paneling needs to be a different shade. This needs to be that. All these little things. Glassed in front promenade. So when there's sprays of water from the ocean, people don't get wet with the sprays. That's the big difference between Olympic and Titanic. The Olympic had that glass in. Titanic, as of yet, hadn't had it put on. So that's why when you see some of this old film footage and they say it's the Titanic, you're really seeing the Olympic.
That's absolutely 100% correct.
Yeah.
They use, of course, these film footages to, of course, sell their product, their ships. And yes, one of the complaints on board the Olympic when she was first sailing her main voyage, she was the one who was first launched, she was the one that first built. A lot of people had complained that on the promenade deck area there, they were getting splashed by all this water here, left and right, and they would say, "Well, what can we do, to try to rectify this situation?" So they said, "Well, what we can do is enclose the forward section of the promenade deck," and that's why you see in the real Titanic pictures, there's no real Titanic videos with that promenade deck installed. There's only one set of film footage that exists still today. It's still 1912 footage. She's at the dock there. I think the Thompson Graving dock, I think, just before she gets fitting out at Moore. So, and that's it. That's the only moving footage they have.
Was that the one that they found the canister in the garden shed somewhere and didn't know it existed?
I believe so. Yeah. Very interesting story. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Then they later on they decide to enclose that forward section.
Yeah, all the little changes, all the little imperfections that were, working out all the little kinks and all the little bugs to make the perfect ship.
Right.
That would have all been done, and that's what Thomas Andrews was doing. That was his job. He took the maiden voyage. He just went from room to room and place to place and saw this and saw that, and okay, we can improve this, we can change that, we can do this. Something's not working right with the galley presses in the kitchen. Something's not working right with this. This room is a little too big. It doesn't need the ladies' reading and writing room is a little too big. It doesn't need to be that big. They're not retiring to that anymore. Let's make that a little smaller and put in more first-class staterooms. Let's do this. All these little crazy little things that they were going to do.
Yeah.
But of course none of it ever happened because everything wound up on the bottom of the North Atlantic. So.
They tried refitting so many things. The stuff that. Needed to be, pretty much opted up with the Olympic. They made it for the Titanic and stuff. They made Titanic 1,500 tons heavier than her sister ship. And, of course, with the enclosed deck and, of course, they had the double bottom and stuff like that.
Titanic was essentially supposed to be the Olympic perfected.
Yes, exactly, right. And they, of course, they widened the the bridge area deck. I think about a foot and a half wider or so. It was very luxurious. I like how they had that royal stove, that design there for that deck itself.
Oh, yeah.
9 windows
Yeah.
and everything. They had the bell right in the middle there.
Sure.
Very classic, the Edwardian era. No, they're just getting off from the Victorian era. Now they're advanced a little something modern, but they're still keeping that Victorian physique.
Oh,
I
yeah,
like that.
you better believe it. Sure, that was tough to get rid of. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, that was a little tough to get rid of, but it was super luxurious ship. Even the other classes. Now, when we say the luxury, of course, that's all first class amenities. But second class and third class had it really good too. They were really, no one had any complaints. People in second class said the accommodations on Titanic in second were just as good as first in a lot of the other liners at that time. Yeah. And the folks down in third class, they set a whole new standard for third class travel. Third class travel years past used to be called steerage. And they still called it steerage class, but the reason that was because you were down at the bottom of the ship near the steering mechanism.
Right.
Where it was the noisiest and the most cluttered, and the cargo was all down there, and that was the worst accommodations, and that's how the people, that didn't have any money, that's how you got across the Atlantic in that.
Right.
But now steerage, no, you had all cabins, you had clean berths, you had clean dining room meals, you had bathrooms, you had a lot of things that a lot of the people traveling in third class, immigrants, coming from Europe to make the crossing to the States for a new life and that. Electricity, a lot of that was their first encounter with any of this stuff. They didn't have that in their homes, where they lived. So it was a whole new experience for everybody. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, third class, it's despite, it was kind of, they try to fit as many people in there as possible.
Yeah. And in actuality, the money was made on third class.
Yeah.
The money on the liners wasn't made on first class. That was nice to have the first class and all that, paying the $thousands for the staterooms and all that. But the money really was on the immigrant trade. In those days, you made a lot of money on that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think back in those days, just to start a new life, picking up your bags and, gathering up your family and stuff just to make ends meet or something like that and travel abroad to enhance your lifestyle.
Sure.
Was only about $40-$50 or so, and that was like a dream come true if you were on the Titanic.
The very, very, very cheapest passenger accommodations were third class, and they were located way down at the bottom and the bow of the ship at the front.
Right.
And that's also, too, where the traveling is the roughest. Because the bow gets all the waves and all that, so that's going to be the bumpier ride, too.
Yeah.
And that was also crew quarters, too. But they did have some third class down there, and it was single men. Single men, single women were birthed on opposite ends of the ships.
Exactly.
They were birthed
That's
on,
what really
families there were single men, and then you had single women, and then you had families.
Yeah.
And they were separated because they didn't want any trouble with anybody, and they made sure things were kept, all on the up and up.
Right.
Yeah. Although I'm sure on closer to the top of the ship during the first class suites that, people were making the rounds from door to door, and visiting so-and-so. And Benjamin Guggenheim, I believe, was traveling with his mistress, wasn't he?
That's correct.
Yeah. So,
yes.
perfectly acceptable for the first class, but no, not down there in the third.
I know. It's something. It's very, very something.
John Jacob Astor traveling with his second wife, 42-year-old John Jacob Astor, with his young bride, 19-year-old Madeline Forrest Astor, pregnant with his child, Yeah. So, in the upper classes it was a little more acceptable, but,
Yeah. The
don't do what we do. Just do what we tell you not to do.
Yes. Yeah. I know nothing. So it's very interesting in those days. I mean, compared to these days today, it's
a definite set of rules for everything.
It's stuff, morals and all that stuff. But yeah, it was still one big life, aboard a ship. You're mostly for these first and second class passengers, you would make that transatlantic run every week or two, basically. And the third class, they're going there for, of course, with a new life. They will just be
this is a one-time thing.
It's a one-time thing.
Although a lot of them did go back. A lot of them did go back to visit family or whatever, and that kind of thing like that. Family in the old country, and some of them would spend the summer months in Finland or Norway or Germany or Italy or wherever, and then come back, on liners and things like that.
Yeah.
The Carpathia, the rescue ship that actually did pick up survivors from they were actually on the Mediterranean run. They were heading to the Mediterranean, so that was their little run. So they were, Mediterranean immigrants or Mediterranean tourists, American tourists, that type of thing like that. So whole different way of travel in those days. Whole different way. Yeah.
Honestly, I know, being a ship enthusiast, ocean liner enthusiast, in this field here, maritime field, I've never been on a cruise liner.
I've never been on
an ocean liner, nothing.
Many years ago, I was warned by I don't know if you would call it a warning, but I suppose I could say her name now. She's not with us anymore. Irene Hughes had told me I should not cross the water.
Wow.
Yeah, and that I was connected with the sea and shipping with some disaster.
Oh, I think you were mentioning something about that to me.
Yeah,
my goodness.
Yeah, and that's a long, long ago. And I never said anything to her about that. And I've been across the water. I've been to Europe. I've been to Cancun, Mexico. I've done things like that, and that. But nothing happened. But maybe it was just at that time. I don't know if there was a time window on that or whatever. But
I don't know. The biggest
nothing happened. I'm still here. So,
that's good. That's really good. Really good. Oh boy. Yeah. It's pardon me. Yeah. You have these omens and stuff like that. These, even people on board the Titanic had these weird. Here we go, the paranormal again. Yeah. You're having all these feelings. These doubts. Should I make an appointment? Should I schedule something to book passage on this vessel? What's telling me not to go? What's telling me to go? So
yeah, one very notable survivor who became very, very vocal about the Titanic in later years, even though at the time she was only a 6-year-old child, was Eva Hart.
Oh wow!
And Eva Hart had a lot to say about the Titanic in that, because they actually got transferred from another ship to the Titanic. There was a coal strike, and what happened with that was a lot of the ships couldn't get the coal they needed to make the transatlantic crossing, so they were taking coal from other ships. So Titanic, they wanted it to make the maiden voyage, so they transferred coal from a lot of the other ships and their employ for Titanic to make the crossing. So other passengers that would have gone on those liners, lucky break for us, we got transferred to second class onto the Titanic, and we're getting great staterooms and we're getting a great price, and it's a wonderful deal. And so her father, Benjamin, thought, oh, this is a wonderful thing. But her mother, she always says, no, this is awful. This is like flaunting in the face of God. She didn't like it. And Eva Hart always said, not exactly how much this is true or not. I don't know what she made up and what actually is true and what's not true. I don't know, but we only have her word to go on. She said that her mother would stay fully clothed in the stateroom, knitting or reading or something all night long while they slept, waiting for this something, whatever she felt was going to happen. And she says, finally it did. It was what she said,
Yeah.
Her father was lost in the disaster, but her and her mother did survive, They did survive the sinking, so, yeah.
It's, haunting stuff, as now we're talking, even famous authors, and I think what was W.T. Stead, I believe?
Yeah.
He had a beard, large beard there. And,
very much involved with the poor and working classes, very involved with the Hull House here in Chicago. William W. Stead, very much so.
I've never known that. Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. He would often go out and work in the factories and work in the stockyards and do things, and that to improve conditions for the poor. Very much worked with Jane Addams, with Hull House and that. Wow. Yeah, very much involved in all that. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Author. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He had like a few premonitions himself or something like he wrote it
not
down.
to go. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was like, oh God, no. And then what the big we were discussing about this earlier. It was the
William W. Stead was on the Titanic. Daniel Burnham was on the Olympic. And the two men were best of friends. And the Olympic, of course, picked up the call that Titanic was in trouble. They were way too far away to do anything about it.
Yeah.
And he just felt so bad that his good friend went down with the ship,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's if we can talk, the paranormal side, or if you want to call it maybe a coincidental thing. I'm not sure, but there was a book that was written about 14 years earlier, before the disaster. A book by a gentleman named Morgan Robertson. He was a publisher. He was a writer, notable writer back then for this one publisher. I think it was maybe in New York, New Jersey, I believe. I'm not sure, but
the similarities to that book and what actually happened on Titanic are just uncanny.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. It's you have. You have a ship that's going on its maiden voyage, pretty much the exact same tonnage, height, weight, length, and everything. The amount of passengers on board, over 2,000 people that was going to be traveling to and from. The ship was going to be on its maiden voyage there. It goes out into the middle of the Atlantic there, hits an iceberg, sinks and over 1,500 souls perish in the disaster. And they find out that the ship was named the Titan. How do we explain that?
Yeah, he almost did everything on the button. Yeah, it had too few lifeboats. Didn't have enough of lifeboat capacity for everybody on board. All this, unbelievable. The similarities, just unreal. Yeah,
I can get over it.
Yeah,
I think that the original publisher.
You heard about the painting too. The artist doing the painting.
Yes, that's correct. Yes,
yeah.
I think there were like there were two versions.
Painted the ship, the sinking ship.
That's
it.
it.
And they says you painted the Titanic.
And it was a four-funneled liner, too.
Yeah.
I know a really great artist who does all these paintings.
Ken Marshall.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know him personally, but
yeah.
There's another gentleman I was talking about, but Ken Marshall is extraordinary. I think a visual historian.
Mm-hmm.
He knows his stuff. And it's been over 20 years now. I can't believe it. His book. With the leading historian now for the Titanic Historical Society, I think Don Lynch, I believe.
Mm-hmm. What you know about Commuter? Is he still alive or did he pass away?
He passed away.
I'm sure he did by now. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was the founder of the Titanic Historical
He
Society.
sure did.
Yeah.
He sort of whacked out a little bit towards the end there, though. He was saying he was actually Captain Smith reincarnated and all this kind of crazy stuff.
Heard something
Yeah,
about
he was getting a little. It was starting to get to him a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
He actually started it, though, for a very, very good reason. Fred Fleet, who actually was the lookout in the crow's nest on the Titanic, who actually was the one that spotted the iceberg.
Yeah.
Fred Fleet, of course, retired from sea service, was retired, and he was selling newspapers in England on a corner and all that, and living with his in-laws. He and his wife were living with his brother-in-law and sister-in-law. And the wife passed away, and then they said, well, Fred, we want you to move. And he became very distraught. That may have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But anyway, he went in the backyard and hung himself from the clothesline, killed himself. They took all his Titanic memorabilia, or anything he would have had with him, they brought off the ship, including keys he carried with him, and threw it all out in a dumpster. And Commuter found out about this and says, you've got to be kidding. Do you know the historic significance and value of this stuff? And it just went into a dumpster? You got to be kidding. So that's why he started Titanic Historical Society. I joined. I didn't know there was a Titanic Historical Society until 1984. I joined it, and then the next year after I joined, they actually found the ship in 85. So I says, boy, that was neat, But I joined it in 84, 85, boom, ship.
Wow.
They found the ship, yeah.
That's
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, in 85,
yeah.
Dr. Robert Ballard and a French expedition, and American and French expedition there. Fantastic. And that's what pretty much got me into it. They made this National Geographic episode. It was a video that I got. I still have it to this day too. I have the actual magazine, the VHS recorder there. It's fantastic. Now I got the DVD version.
It's amazing when you see, like when you go back and look at the old photos, the 85 photos and the 85 video that they took and all that, how much of that ship has actually deteriorated in those years from 85 till now. You used to be able to look into the gymnasium. You could see the handles on the equipment, for the electric horse and the mechanical camel, and even the grating that would cover the gearing on the machines and all that. No longer can you do that. It all collapsed in. That's all gone. The bridge all went in. What used to be Captain Smith's quarters is collapsed in. So little by little, it's all kind of just going down into nothingness,
Yeah, they at the time even they had a board panelist there with some of the survivors. They said, how did the ship sink? Did it really break in half, or did it stay, at the surface there and just slid down the waves without even breaking, or something like that? Just stayed in one piece, and they were just going back and forth, deliberating. Some of the survivors, I think, darn it, I forgot her name, but she was mentioning that, no, they did see the ship break in two.
Yeah, a lot of survivors from the boats said that. But what they did at that time, in 1912, when they held the inquests...
Ruth Becker. That's Ruth Becker Blanchard. That's what.
Yeah. They never talked about it. Her mother, she didn't talk about it until years later. Matter of fact, her family didn't even know they were survivors. They survived. She, her little brother, and her survived. The mother, little brother, and herself survived the Titanic sinking. Father was still in. They were missionary, I think, in India or somewhere. I don't know exactly where he was as a missionary. He didn't come. He stayed there. So fortunately, or he might have been lost. And her mother said when they landed in New York, and don't tell anybody we were on Titanic. And she said she never did until like the 90s. Her family never knew, that she survived the Titanic sinking. But many people in the lifeboats, depending where you were, or whatever, said yeah, it did break in two. Now, however. Based on the highest-ranking surviving officer, who would have been Charles Herbert Lightoller,
correct.
Based on his testimony, they figured, well, he's the highest-ranking surviving officer. They said, when did you leave the ship? He says, I didn't. The ship left me. He stayed on right to the end. He was right there. But from the angle he was at, what he saw was maybe 200 feet of it sticking up in the air that went under. Yeah. He says, no, it all went under intact. But he was so close to it, he couldn't tell. However, there were survivors that said, no, it did break in two. It broke in two. The stern seemed to kind of settle back, and then it sort of righted itself, and then the whole thing went down in two pieces,
Right.
And Jack Thayer even drew a picture of it.
That's right.
But they said, no, you're all wrong. This is what he said. He would know, And it turned out, now that they found it,
Yeah, Jack Thayer, a marvelous guy. I think he was traveling first class with his father and mom, actually. Yeah. Big railroad tycoon back in those days. And, he did survive. And Bob's correct. He drew the entire thing for the board of for the committee there, for the American committee, I think the British committee too. That he just drew out this whole illustration of how it collided. It's how it stayed in the water for a few hours, or a couple hours, and sank, and how it broke up. So it's his testimony is incredible. Very beneficial, to the. To the committee itself. So, but then again, the committee kind of rejected that too. It's they were just like, we want to preserve this thing, this name Titanic, the ship Titanic, make sure it's in one piece. And for years they just said no, it sank in one piece. So they had this fantasized version of it, saying no, it sank in, just so gracefully down into the water, and with everybody in it, and so they left it at that until 1985, when it was first discovered. This is where they found it is broken up in two sections. Now it's even up still to debate today too. Where exactly did it break up? Was it right in between the second and third funnels? Was it between the third and fourth funnels and everything like that? New compilations of... I'll let you go. Go ahead.
No, I was just say, it obviously broke by the stress points.
That's what I believe,
the angle that it was at, it couldn't stand that stress. It wasn't designed for that. It wasn't designed for its whole rear end to be sticking up out of the water that many feet, and it couldn't take it. And so as it was going down, as the bow filled up with water, it got heavier and heavier. Stern was just full of air. Naturally, it snapped. It went down. Now, I think the big debate is, did it break into above the water or below the waterline? After it went down, then did it snap or whatever like that? Well, most people said that, it did break above the waterline. It did snap, and then it seemed to right itself. And a lot of people said, maybe it's going to right itself and float. They actually thought for a few seconds that it was, but then it didn't. It just kind of didn't tilt it back down, and down it went. The whole stern, whoever else was still hanging on, all went under,
It's like they, I think the last piece holding that thing together was the actual piece of metal that was first made for the ship, and that's the keel. That's probably the strongest part of the ship, and so many strict, weak points. The ship cracking, that's a weak point. You're stressing it out that much. It falls back to the water. That's another stressful fracture there. So all these, and you're in the waves too. So it's going up and down, up and down. It's just like a piece of metal or a piece of wood that you just, keep, bending back and forth, and eventually just, collapses. It breaks. Similar to what the keel did, and that was the strongest part. And once that gave way, most likely the bow, since it's all filled with water, it's not necessarily buoyant anymore. It's all filled with water. Where you have the stern section, it's all filled with air. It's going to stay on the surface as much as possible until it's completely flooded. But that's bow section is going to pull that stern, whatever is connected to it, which is the keel, and that's why you mentioned it's righting itself pretty much, but only for a little while until that gives way, that little piece gives way. And yes, they got some survivor accounts where it just completing at a 90-degree angle, or at a 45 or a 23-degree angle. So
depending where you were, what angle you were looking at it at.
Yeah,
where your lifeboat was, what angle you saw it at, and people that were basically in the water too. Some people were still in the water and looking up at this big Goliath thing, sticking up, and you're real close to it. Where other people were, 50, 100 feet, whatever, 200 feet, mile away, out in the water, looking at it go down. So, it depended where you were, what you saw,
Absolutely, yeah. And also brings the question real quick of how they even spotted the iceberg. You know where I'm going with that. Yeah. So, I know it's very. I've seen numerous documentaries. I've seen, animations galore on how all this came to be and what happened that night. They mentioned, of course, it was almost a pitch black night. Yes, they had stars. There were the stars out there. It was a moonless night. They mentioned there wasn't any moon. It was only lit by just the stars itself. It was a pitch black night, and they didn't see this thing until they were right on top of the sucker, and they had like 30 or so minutes to react. I mean, take 30 seconds to change course of a ship that size on a dime. Good luck, Yeah, they mentioned reversing the engines. But what's your take on that?
My take is that basically everything that could have gone wrong for them did. Number one, your crow's nest lookout didn't have binoculars, which could have helped. Number two, it wasn't a real well-lit night.
Yeah.
There was no moon, it wasn't really well lit. And then number three, the sea was so calm. So there was no breaking water up against it. If the sea had been a little choppy, you could have seen some breaking water up ahead against an iceberg, and you say, okay, there's something up there. We need to kind of avoid this, whatever it may be it a ship, be it an iceberg, be it whatever it may be out in the middle of the North Atlantic. So kind of everything went against them, It was the classic, if there was a way for it to go wrong, it did.
Exactly.
And that's what did it. So they kind of all were contributing factors to it.
Yeah.
The other big contributing factor was, sometimes you get criticism when you say this, but I would say negligence on the captain. Captain Smith should not have been barreling that ship at 22 knots through an ice field when they knew what they were doing, They knew they were going through an ice field like that, and, But then again, when I read things and stuff about the shipping practices at that time, that was pretty commonplace. You kind of did that. Now, Captain Stanley Lord, who had the Californian, which was, we still don't know, 9 miles, 19 miles, 5 miles, however far away it was from the Titanic, it was definitely close enough to see what was going on.
Right.
And see there was a ship there and the ship was in some sort of trouble or whatever. But Captain Stanley Lord did everything the right way. His ship, the Californian, he closed it down for the night and said, nope, let's stop. There's too much ice. We're closing down. Daylight comes. We can kind of skirt around the icebergs and that's when we'll continue on. We're not in that much of a hurry. Safety first. Right. He did it the right way. Captain Smith did it the wrong way. Captain Stanley Lord got railroaded as the evil one about this. Captain Smith is made out to be a hero.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Smith was not a bad man. He had a wonderful record with the White Star Line. Matter of fact, he never had an accident. This was supposed to be his retirement voyage at 62 years old. He never had an accident, spotless record, with the White Star Line. And actually, he was an asset to the company. People traveled with who was commanding the ship. Smith. Oh, we're traveling with Captain Smith. You got your tickets to go with Smith. So he was great. In that way. But the one screw up that he made here. Now, was he doing this on his own, or was he taking orders from Mr. Bruce Usme, who was the managing director? Them German ships are really touting their whistle about getting across the Atlantic faster, and we're capable of doing that. If we go at 22 knots, we can make it there a day sooner. Won't that be great? Not only are we the most luxurious ship, we are also fast enough to compete with the German liners. So you don't know if he was taking direct orders from him, but then no, a captain at sea, he gives the orders. He's in charge of the ship. He can override him. But he chose not to do that for whatever reason.
It's really bizarre.
We don't know,
As far as I know, there's only like one account between what happened between those two.
Yeah.
Bruce Ismay, the managing director of the White Star Line, the actual guy who was on the ship who owned the thing, and the commander of that vessel, Captain Edward John Smith. And this was, I believe, in the Deck E, I think it was in the reception room or something like that. And it was a discussion overheard by Mrs. Elizabeth Lyons, I believe. She overheard their conversation together, Captain Smith and Ismay, saying that we could make it a day early and surprise, the press and everybody else and on the committee and stuff like that. Saying that yes, we can go that fast, lighting an extra boiler or two just to get some more steam and and drive a little bit faster, but. As much truth as that, I'm not sure, but that's what I've heard. That's what I've read. This one lady here who was at the reception room at that time, that's probably what she heard, but is 100% that's true? I'm not sure, but that's what I read. Very true, very true. There was actually a German film that was made back in 43 or so.
Did you ever see that thing?
Oh, that was
Oh, my God,
insane.
it's a propaganda film.
Bingo.
Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah.
God. I understand a little bit of German. I
The British sailors were all cowards.
They're all cowards.
Yeah,
boy. Propaganda to its finest.
Oh, yeah.
100%. And I'm looking at this thing. It says, the faster the speed of the ship, the more money that you're going to make, Captain Smith. That's pretty much it. So go see it. If everyone, I think it's on YouTube now. I'm not
it's
sure
tough to get a hold of. I got a copy of it. It's
Wow,
a hard one to get. The one, let me know if you ever find, I don't think a print exists of it, the very first Titanic film, How I Was Saved from Titanic, the 1912 film, starring Dorothy Gibson,
Bingo.
who survived. They
Yeah.
do have posters and things of it, and she actually wore the dress that she wore off the ship.
That's right.
For her costume.
Right.
And of course, the film really was more of a romance of her falling in love with one of the crew and marrying him and all this and that and the other. But nonetheless, it is the first Titanic film. But they don't have a print of it. But then for a long time too, we didn't think they had Edison's Frankenstein, and that surfaced. I got a copy of that one. Yeah,
that's cool. Oh
yeah.
Man, yeah. It was. I think there was one survivor who was on all three ships. I cannot. I'll let
Violet
you take,
Jessup.
I'll let you take the reins.
Yeah, good old Violet Jessup. She was fantastic.
Yeah.
Of 903 crew members on Titanic, 23 were women.
Right.
23 were women, and they did, of course, when we say crew now, they did not serve in the running of the ship. They were stewardesses, kitchen help, first class, bedroom stewards, that type of thing like that. That's what they did. And Violet Jessup was just one such of these people. She apparently had what it took, to make the grade to be a stewardess first class on a White Star liner, and that's what she did. She had the distinction of serving first on the Olympic, and then the Olympic was involved in a little minor crash, a little minor accident with that, and then of course they took everyone off of Olympic and transferred the crew and everybody over to Titanic, the experienced folks for the maiden voyage. Violet Jessup being one of them. So she, of course, was on Titanic when it sank, and then during the First World War, she served as a nurse for the Red Cross on the other sister, which was now named the Britannic. It was originally supposed to be called the Gigantic, but after the Titanic disaster, they opted for a patriotic name, so they named it the Britannic, but it never saw passenger service. All the carpeting, fittings, woodwork, furnishings, everything was put in storage. After the war, it was supposed to be fitted out as a passenger liner and go into service again, but that never happened because the ship got torpedoed. So Violet Jessup had the distinction of being on 3 ships, White Star Line ships that sunk. Now, a good story about Violet Jessup is the Titanic story. She got off towards the end in one of the lifeboats that was filled with a lot of immigrants that did find, somehow make their way up onto the boat deck and get into the boat. And her boat was pretty full. The first boats that left the ship were pretty empty because a lot of people didn't want to get off the ship, and the crew was a little antsy to launch the boats.
Right.
Later on, when it was apparent that they were in some kind of trouble, there was no problem filling lifeboats. People were, you'd get in the lifeboat with no problem at all. So the boat she got off in was pretty full. So she got in the boat. She was ordered to get in there. She got in wearing her life vest. Someone handed her a baby. The whole time she was in the boat for the 3 hours until the Carpathia, the rescue ship, comes to pick them up, she held this baby in her arms. She got hoisted up onto the deck of the Carpathia. She said she was holding the baby. She turned around. A woman rushed at her, took the baby out of her arms, and that was the end of that. She figured, oh, well, it was the mother. She never saw baby or mother again ever in her life. Now, years later, 1966, maybe 67, somewhere right around there, probably not too many years before she passed away. She was retired now from service, and she was retired, and she lived in a very picturesque little cottage out in Southwold in England. And during a bad thunderstorm, her phone tended to ring, 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 ring. And she would oftentimes just go pull it off the hook, and then when the storm was over, she'd put it back on, and that would be the end of that. Well, one time this happened, and she decided to answer the phone. She answered the phone, and the person said, "Are you the Violet Jessup that was the stewardess on the Titanic?" And she said, "Yes." "How did you find that out?" The person said, "Well, I was the baby that you held in the lifeboat all this time." Oh. And she says, "You've got to be kidding. Now, how did you find out about me and everything?" And apparently they never connected, so she never did really connect. But she said she really believed it was the person because she said she never told the story to anybody. She was at that time writing her book, Titanic Survivor.
Yeah.
And her editor, whoever, said, "Well, Vi, you must have told the story to somebody." She says, "No, I didn't even tell it to you. You never heard it, did you?" She says, "No." So she said it must have been that person, but she never did make the connection to actually verify it. But anyway, that's kind of a neat story. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And incidentally, after being on 3 of the liners with 3 accidents and disasters happening, White Star asked her after the First World War, when she was no longer a nurse, "Would you like to come back and work for us?" And she says, No, I don't think so. I think she switched over. She went to Cunard or another. She did stay at sea, but she went to one of the other lines. She decided she'd had enough of bad luck with White Star. So,
oh, God. Like I said, bad omens galore.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, but the renaming of the Britannic there, back then, when everything, their ships, the White Star line, those liners always ended with IC.
Yeah, the IC suffix.
Adriatic and the Titanic and stuff like that. And this is they figured, well, these brand new ships, they thought of the Greek gods and stuff like that. So they said, well, let's call our very first one Olympic. So they said they have a rival who's going to be our second, name of the ship. So they said, well, the Greek rivals, well, they were the Titans. So they thought Titanic would be a fitting name because it's huge, humongous, it's strength-worthy, and all that stuff. And they said, well, another rival of the Olympians, the Giants. So let's name it Gigantic back then. So, but after all these things have been happening to their White Star vessels left and right, they didn't want to put another, rival name on their vessel. So they said, instead of Gigantic, yes, it's going to be one heck of a huge ship, or ocean liner. Let's just, keep it traditional and, like you said, like patriotic or something like that. So they renamed it Britannic with 2 N's. So, it never saw regular passenger life history. Nothing. Everything was just all First World War combat, pretty much. They were transferring, the wounded.
They were actually a hospital ship.
It's a hospital ship.
Yeah, a hospital ship, but they didn't get torpedoed.
From what I heard, it's now confirmed it was mined.
Mined.
I think it was out in the Aegean Sea, the Greek island of Kea, or Mudros is on the other side, I believe. I think it was the Greek island of Kea, as they were trying to beach her. I think it was Captain Bartlett who was in command.
It was horrible because he was trying to beach it. He kept the propellers going, and a lot of people got killed by the props. A lot of people got chopped up by the propellers. The ship that were in the sea and stuff. It was awful.
Oh God,
it was terrible.
Yeah, and it was like
And she survived this. She got she was in the ocean. She got off and she survived the whole sinking of that. But that was it. She says, no, it's getting worse and worse. She says, the first ship that was in the collision, okay, I walked off that one, all right. The second one, I walked off in a lifeboat. The third one, I got out of the sea. She says, that's enough for me. I'm no more White Star Line service. That's it. Yeah.
I think she got, her skull was cracked in 2 or 3 places because she, at one time when she tried to surface after the propeller, for many folks who don't know the story, it's just that these lifeboats that were coming down from the ship were pretty much coming down unannounced at the time. The one that she was on was announced, and there was 30 or so people inside the lifeboat there. And as they were lowering it down, they finally made it to the water. But the thing was, the ship was still moving. And what's moving it was the engines, the propellers, and everything like that. And they were still, going at over, I think it was 50,000 RPMs or so. I think they had the central turbine engaged because they were trying. The starboard engine. Something happened with the starboard engine, so they were only running on the turbine engine, which is the central propeller, and the port engine, the reciprocating reciprocating engine on the port side. That's the left side of the ship. So only 2 propellers were working, and they were trying to beach the ship because something blew up. The front of the bow blew up. They didn't know what the heck was happening. They thought it was during war. It could have been torpedo. Could have been a mine. They could have run aground. Anything could have been happening back then, at the time. So he was doing his best to try to beach the ship, and the shore was no more than 2 or 3 miles away. So he did his best. But anyway, the everything was being lowered. The lifeboats was being lowered. She was on board the lifeboat there, and by the luck of the draw or so, she knows that propeller was coming behind them, and the ship, like I said, was still moving, and people just panicked and everything. It was really crazy. And by the grace of God, she just leaped up out of the boat there into the water, and you can just see the carnage and the aftermath of what happened as that lifeboat just got sucked into the port propeller there. And that was all the victims, 30 people that lost their lives. There was only 30 people out of I think over 1,000 people that were aboard a ship. Only 30 lost their lives on that one.
And Britannic sunk very quickly.
Very quickly.
Yeah, Britannic went down. Now, Titanic took its time going down, like 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Britannic went down really fast.
Yeah.
So, usually when something blows it up like that, that's what happens. Like Lusitania. Lusitania got hit by a torpedo, boom, sunk within 18 minutes or 15 minutes or something really quick. It went down, Yeah. You don't even have time to lower your boats,
It was crazy, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had, for Britannic, about 58, 59 minutes only, and that was it. From what I've heard, what I've read and stuff like that, when the accident happened, the explosion physically lifted up the front end of the ship, the front prow of the ship there. And as it did that, it twisted the superstructure in a way where they were trying to bring down the watertight doors. Again, the same almost configuration of the Titanic and the Olympic. As they were lowering the doors, for some reason, those doors became jammed.
Yeah, that was it. If the hull's twisted, it's not going to work.
It's not going to go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Anyway, so the sad story of the Olympic, Titanic, and the Olympic not so sad. Olympic kind of saw service.
Yeah.
They finally scrapped the Olympic like in the 30s. I think like 39 or 40
that
or
was
something like that.
They
finally scrapped it because by then everything was diesel was converting, and by then Olympic had kind of just had it. It's seen its day.
Agreed.
I think it's the White Swan Hotel.
Yes, sir. Yes.
That has a lot of the woodwork and paneling and carved staircasing and all that. And they said, if you ever want to see what the Titanic looked like inside, go to that hotel. Because all the fittings from the Olympic, they're all in there, and that's what it would have looked like. The lead glass windows and all the luxurious fittings and all that. Yeah.
Bucket list.
Yeah.
Bucket list.
Down the line.
Oh, man.
This can go on and go on and go on. The Titanic, like we say, has been going on for 109 years and probably will continue for 109 more. We will no longer be left on this earth, and it will continue on and on and on and on. Okay. When I first joined, I don't know if they're still doing it, but that's, like I say, 1984. When I joined the Titanic Historical Society, there was a couple, and, they might be gone now themselves, too. They were an elderly couple. And their wish was, whoever joined the Titanic Historical Society, when you joined it, they sent you a copy of a book. And it's a little hardcover book, nice, nicely bound and everything, a nice little jacket on and everything. And it's all pictures of all the graves in Nova Scotia, where the Titanic victims are buried.
Yeah.
The 300 that got picked. Well, not all 300 are there now, but
over 100 for sure.
Yeah, that are there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they wanted everyone to have this book because they went there, they photographed that they did this, and so they sent me this little book. So it's really a nice little thing that you have. Yeah.
Wow.
Like I said, I don't know if they're still doing that because that couple may be, passed away by now or whatever. I don't know. And like I said, it's been so long since I've been in the Titanic Historical Society. I don't know. But it will just go on and go on and go on. One thing I do regret is they used to invite, and at that time there were probably still maybe a dozen or so survivors still left. And like in Woods Hole, they would have this Titanic convention, and they would have them there and everything, and you could talk to them, and they would sign autographs and all that. And I never went. And I'm kind of sorry that, this is something that you get a one-time chance to do, and I never went, what are you going to do? You win some, you lose some,
But Bob Ballard is still here.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And we, if we get a chance, you and I got to go. Massachusetts. I think Massachusetts. I think.
Yeah, Woods Hole.
Yes,
yeah, Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute. Yeah,
and I think he's still doing courses there in marine biology and archaeology and stuff like that.
He's now probably in his 70s.
Probably 70s,
At least by now, because you figure that's been since 1985. That's a good 35 years, 34 years. So wow. Well, you don't realize how much time has elapsed.
Oh yeah.
It amazes me how many people in different stories and different things went down on the Titanic.
Yeah.
Just about every British series, any British, period piece had somebody in some wealthy families. Downton Abbey, somebody went down on the Titanic. Upstairs, downstairs, Lady Marjorie went down on the Titanic. Every upper class family had somebody on that Titanic that went down.
Yeah, it was amazing.
It was never one of the maids or anybody from the third class or second class. It was always somebody from the upper class that went down on the Titanic.
Right. Yeah. Really bizarre. I trying to research my background, my family history and stuff like that. I'm trying to create a family tree and stuff. And we just got our DNA back, and they did something about a matchup thing or whatever about your traits or something like that, your genealogy. And it was revealed that I had a 0.01% trait combination match or so with Benjamin Guggenheim.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
I'm like, I was like...
Now, 0.01 means like what? One of your fingernails or something is like good Lord.
After like a 23 or so, different types of, chromosomes, or 22, I forgot which number. They said... Only one. They had a check mark, only one. So we had to put you way the heck down here.
But nonetheless, it's still kind of cool. Yeah, isn't it?
I was like, well, where's my half? Where's that gold watch at? No, all respects to him. He, great guy. He and his valet, I believe. Yes, first class.
Victor Giglio.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
I knew him very well. He was a nice gentleman.
Oh, yeah.
nice man. Yeah.
Wow.
He was actually going to be my valet, but I couldn't pay him what Guggenheim paid him, so he went with him. So.
But it's amazing. It was absolutely. He died like you said. He wanted to be known as going down as a gentleman, and that's his words, his real words. Yeah. Many of the question is how accurate. Are the movies, the plays that are being done today, how much is that accurate?
Well, if you're looking at A Night to Remember, with the exception of the ship all going down intact and not breaking in two, I'd say pretty 90+% accuracy.
Wow.
Because a lot of eyewitness testimony, a lot of people that were actually on the ship that survived it, they could say what lifeboat they were in, they knew what part of the deck they were on, they knew this and that. The only thing, strangely enough, that no one seems to know is, through the years, it's always been, what did the band play?
Oh.
Was it Nearer My God to Thee? Was it, the general consensus it was Nearer My God to Thee, and other people said, no, it was an old Episcopal hymn called The Song of Autumn.
Autumn.
That's what was played.
Yeah.
My feeling is what the band played as the ship went down was nothing. Because by then, the deck slant would have been so great, you would be hanging on for dear life, let alone trying to play a violin or cello or something. Everything would have been just sliding right down into the water by that time.
Agreed.
So, I don't think you would have heard that. The last 20 minutes or half hour, I don't think you would have heard anything coming from the band.
Yeah, I think that film and, of course, James Cameron's, updated film.
With the exception of just the fictional characters.
The fictional, of course, yeah.
But nonetheless, it was pretty accurate. The period accuracy was pretty great. The costuming, the set design, everything, all that, where other ships didn't have that kind of, the other movies, I should say, didn't have that kind of budget.
Yeah.
So you kind of got the flavor for the times. One other thing about A Night to Remember that was a little odd was when they were having the one dinner scene, where it's like a first-class dinner, and all the women were sitting at the table with the big, flowery, feathery hats.
That's right, yeah.
You never would have done that. That was strictly streetwear and outdoor, and that never sitting at a dinner with the hats on. But I think they did it just to kind of give you a taste for the period,
right?
For the clothing and that kind of thing, like that,
Yeah. You're very, very true. Yeah. Absolutely. They have. You think that they have a lot of video, a lot of film, a lot of footage of these ships.
Oh no,
it's not true. It's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most photographed out of all of them, the most filmed ship out of all three. It was probably Olympic.
Oh, yeah, because it's the only one that had the long life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Olympic, right after Titanic went down, the public was hungry for anything to do with Titanic. Well, of course, your Titanic is gone. You can't get any film or photos of that, so you went to the Olympic.
Right.
Who's going to know the difference? They're so close, no one's going to know.
Right.
And you didn't. For a long time, you didn't. Now we know, because of the deck being closed and a few little changes in it. The color schemes were different, too, but it didn't matter. Everything was in black and white anyway.
Right.
And none of them were interior shots. Interior of the Olympic was all done in greens, where the Titanic was all done in rose colors.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Having a green staircase.
Carpeting in greens, nice velvet green carpeting and velvety and green and all that. Where everything on Titanic was done in rose shades, all the public rooms and everything. Yeah.
That's incredible. Oh my God. But I guess that's how, and many don't know, but many of their inner flooring, their tiles and stuff like that, wasn't really all marble. It was
linoleum tiles.
Yeah,
linoleum was a new hot thing in 1912, and it was a great thing. And they were using the linoleum pretty extensively.
Yeah,
they were putting linoleum in everything. Yeah, they were using it all over the place. Yeah.
They mentioned something about probably the most preserved of any feature that was on the Titanic. Because it's been there, for over 100 years now. They say I was, looking at one interview they were doing not too long ago with a couple of my friends. They said one of the questions was, "What do you think? What's the most preserved room down there in the Titanic?" And they all said, "Well, the Turkish bath and everything, the Turkish brick room, because everything there is still down there. The
lounges,
the lounges,
the mosaic tiles, the stained glass.
That's still there. Oh my God!
And there were not a lot of photos of it. Turkish bath. There might be one photo of it. Yeah. That might be it. There weren't a lot of photos of the Turkish bath. Turkish bath was an amenity open to first class, and I think it was like $1 extra.
Yes.
$1 extra in 1912 now worked out to about $23.50. So that was what a session in the Turkish bath would have cost you. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And you were pampered, just like, fingernails.
And then you opened the door, and then you were right down the road there, right just outside the Turkish bath was the swimming pool.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think it was on the starboard side, right below the funnel or something like that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Separate hours for ladies, separate hours for men.
Yeah.
And then I think there was 1 hour there where you had both. There may have been 1 hour of time where women and men were both allowed to be together. But most of the time it was like separate hours for women in the pool, separate hours for men.
Wow. That's, it's amazing. You compare. Like I said, I wish I had the experience of going on a modern cruise liner today, like the Oasis class. That's the largest of the.
Well, that's going to be an entirely different way of travel than they traveled then.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I honestly, this is
not many people travel today with 16 trunks of clothing, and a valet and a personal maid,
not at all. No. These days they're just, they build these
1 or 2 suitcases, shorts and T-shirts, maybe a dinner jacket somewhere there. We're ready to go.
And that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
that's their vacation. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Shorts, T-shirts, sandals when we get to Bermuda or whatever, and we're ready to go,
I can check in the Marriott from here.
Very, very informal era we live in now, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, once upon a time there were rules for everything, how you dressed, you looked, you wore certain clothing for this, you did that, you did this, your etiquette, your table etiquette, your manners, how you set your food, how you ate, where you set your spoons, everything, and that's how you knew who was who. Even serving your tea. Even serving tea, when you had tea poured, someone that was upper crust, the tea would only go in half a cup. The reason for this being, when you were from an upper class family, your china was very, very expensive, and it was also very thin. And if you filled it with nice hot tea, you might crack the china. So that's why you only went halfway, and then you put some cream and lemon in it. Yeah. And also to your spoon. When you eat your soup, the spoon goes away from you, and you pick it up and you go this way, like this. Yeah. Not to you. And that's how you know. Like when you're at a state function or a dinner or something, that you know who's really from the upper echelon by the way they eat and by the way they do things. Yeah,
I have to take some classes now. See,
the only reason I learned, I've eaten soup and still do eat soup with the spoon coming towards me. The only reason I found this out was like a couple of years ago. They had like a Miss Manners come to the library. Yeah. And I said, this will be kind of fun, just to learn about this etiquette and all this stuff like that. And that's what she said. All these different things she was telling us that about the spoon and the china and all this and that. Something I would have never thought about.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I think there was a scene in James Cameron's Titanic saying Jack was like at the table says, "Where do I begin here?" And she says, "Well,
Start
just
at the end and work your way to the
well,
middle." Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and it's got to be true. So it's amazing how they ran their lives.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
and
Everything was run by rules. There was a gong. Or well, on ships it would be a bugle.
a bugle.
And when that was
yeah.
sounded, you knew it was an hour, and then you retired to your stateroom, and that's when your valet or your lady's maid came in and you dressed for dinner. All these pins and hooks and a men's. Sure, I do a whole thing on a domestics. I do a program for libraries on domestic service, and I end it with getting dressed.
Wow.
And I do a man's formal shirt. There's 14 pieces of jewelry in a man's formal shirt. Yeah, between detachable collars, cufflinks, detachable cuffs, shirt studs. Tie, a stick for the cravat and all this. There's 14 pieces of jewelry into a formal shirt.
Oh,
Can you imagine?
I get hot.
That's why you needed somebody to help you get dressed. And then when it was over with, you had to do the reverse process. Everything had to come off again. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
my God!
Yeah.
How could? If you think of the women, the ladies back then.
Oh, women had it even worse.
Oh.
Between their hairstyling and all the little hooks and buttons on gloves and dresses and gowns and everything and all. It was a lot of work. And you had to wear certain dresses for this and certain clothes for that and certain this and certain,
Yeah. I got to give them a lot of credit.
In the course of a day, you change probably 6 or 7 times. Yeah.
Oh God, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I what do you call it? I was learning so much history over there at the Orland Historical Society.
Oh yeah.
The Humphrey House.
Oh yeah.
And they were
they got that strong Bachelor's Grove connection.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Mrs. Humphreys.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
The Patrick family.
The Patrick, Amelia Patrick. Oh my goodness, yeah. Fascinating history. And they were just, mentioning, how they would.
He wasn't a real nice man.
I
Senator John Humphreys, he wasn't a really, really friendly, nice man.
I heard he was stern. He was a bit stern. He was formal. He got to the point, but still in the way he got his point across somehow.
But for a person of his status and what he was for that time, Victorian, Edwardian, that probably would have been appropriate behavior for someone.
Right.
Of that,
Like the story.
Robert Lincoln was that way. Robert Lincoln was very much the Victorian patriarch and the Victorian businessman, and, he was that way. Like his son, Jack, he says, you're Abraham Lincoln II, but they never called him that. You got to earn that name. They nicknamed him Jack. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I never knew that one.
Yeah, he had Abraham Lincoln II, his son. The son never, same thing. Son died about 18 years old, same age that his brother Tad died.
Tad,
and he's the only one of Robert Lincoln's family that's buried in Springfield.
In Springfield,
the Lincoln tomb.
I was just there too. Oh,
God. The Lincoln
Gorgeous.
tomb. Yeah. Abraham Lincoln was moved 17 different times before he was finally buried permanently.
Yeah, I heard about that. It was a wreck, and plus, it was like 20-some days where his body was just all laid out like that.
Yeah. Put in the downstairs, in the damp ground and covered up with boards and this and that and the other. And then Mary Todd was brought next to him, and then they would be buried, and then they had to take him out again. They had to do some work on the crypt. And finally, about 1901, Robert had enough of this. And he wanted his family buried permanently, and that was it and everything. And that was last time that finally he was buried permanently, But then again in the 30s, they did do some work on the tomb and that. And the bodies were moved again, but not... I don't think the bodies were moved, but they did work on the tomb again, maintenance work and that kind of thing.
They shored up a lot of good stuff.
See, that's why you should never build anything like that on a hill. Nothing with an obelisk should ever be built on a hill.
Oh,
well...
God.
Goodness gracious, this could go on for like another hour and a half. You're going to have to come back and do it again.
We got chips and we got some root beer.
Yeah. You're going to have to come back. Mike, thank you so much, Mr. Mikey. You like Mikey?
I've always grown up with that name since grammar
I'm going to call you Mikey. I'm not going to break it. We're going to call you Mikey.
Awesome.
Everyone else, Mike Rosario, until you get the permission to call him Mikey. Thank you so much for coming on. God, what a joy to meet you. Yeah, really great. You know how like with some people you just kind of click. We talked on the phone and bep, and I said, oh God, this is it. I know I got a soulmate here with this. When you have that connection with something like that, with Titanic or with Lincoln or whatever it may be, paranormal, whatever. And this one we got the connection with the three. We didn't even touch on paranormal and that. That's a whole other show. You have to come back for that. We're doing the show on the 17th. You're welcome to come on if you choose to.
Oh, wonderful.
I'll have Zach and Emily on. You can meet them and you're welcome to come on the show if you choose
Cool.
to come on.
Thanks,
You
Bob.
can join
Well,
in the conversation. Yeah,
awesome.
I run a very informal thing here. You see how we do, like you said, just us talking back and forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you did fine. Wait, when you hear yourself, you're going to say, "Oh my God, I sound really good."
Oh, I'm horrible.
No.
I ended up as a first tenor in high school. I have never known. Oh man. But
Well,
appreciate it, Bob.
You're very welcome. Thanks again for coming on. Thank you. You brought all this. I didn't. Well, after this is over, I'm going to talk to you about some of the stuff you brought here.
Awesome.
Brought all kind of books and all kind of things and all kind of wonderful stuff here.
Oh yeah, really good.
Okay,
Yeah.
we are going to wrap for Paranormal Radio this session. Thank you all so much for listening. Like I say, it's just an absolute joy to do these shows. Really love doing them. We do have this show set up for May 17th, so we'll be doing that. This show we are taping it on the 26th. You will hear it YouTube and also the Windy City Network, www.windycityhometown.com. Oh, within a couple of days or so. It depends when John Shikanda gets around to putting them up for us. John Shikanda produces the shows and does all the tech stuff for us and that, and depending on his schedule, because he does other things too, so when he has the time to do it, he'll do them for us. He's always done a fantastic job, and we owe him a lot of thanks and a lot of gratitude for doing what he does, as well as this gentleman sitting 10 feet away from me over here, Mr. John DeVita, for the wonderful work that he's done. John has been in, I think you set up the Marconi on the Titanic, didn't you, John? He's been around in radio since there's been radio. He's been in radio so long. Yeah, he's just a wonderful guy. And you never hear him. Once in a while he'll join if he's got something to say. John joins in with us. So thank you, John. Again, it's a joy. Thank you for letting me do these shows. Thank you. I very much appreciate it. Okay, that's it. We're going to sign out. Everyone have a wonderful evening. Still continue to stay safe. Don't forget to get your vaccines. You do need to get that done. And everyone just have a wonderful 2021. Let's make this the best year of our lives. Thank you all for listening. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Paranormal Radio with Bob Trzeciak from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. Paranormal Radio was directed by John DeVita, and our executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is Mr. John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Monday, April the 26th, year 2021. Until next time, friends, be safe and thanks for listening.